Once upon a time, in the village of Eziyama, lived a young beautiful girl named Esohe. Her beauty was as radiant as the morning sun, but her true charm lay in her compassion and kindness. Everyone in the village adored Esohe, for she was always willing to help those in need, spreading joy and happiness wherever she went. In the warmth of her mother and maternal family's love, Esohe's childhood was a vibrant and joyous one. Her mother, a talented merchant, taught her the value of hard work and the art of trade in the busy village market. Her father, Osato, who had been married after he left Esoe's mother, came in once in a while to visit them bearing gifts. Esoe would often accompany her mother to the market, learning the ways of trade and the value of hard work. But fate took a cruel turn when her mother fell ill and passed away, leaving a deep void in Esoe's heart. Her father, a hard-working oil merchant who traveled a lot to neighboring communities due to the nature of his trade, soon came to pick her to live with him in the hopes of providing Esoe with a motherly figure and a good life. While Obi, Esoe's new stepmother, and her daughter Kamsi pretended to welcome Esoe with open arms in Osato's presence, their true colors showed once he left for his frequent travels, revealing a harsh reality. Kamsi was the total opposite of Esoe's own kind and gentle spirit. She was malicious and spoiled, often reckless and devoid of empathy. Meanwhile, Obi ruled with an iron fist, burdening Esoe with endless chores and errands while her daughter Kamsi wallowed in idleness. Obi and Kamsi both harbored hatred for Esoe, never missing an opportunity to display their malice. They would beat her at the slightest provocation and tell lies against her to her father upon his return from trips, causing him to question Esoe's upbringing and character. Obi would deprive Esoe of food if she fails to complete her chores on time, and when she does, she was forced to eat leftovers and she dared not speak up against their cruelty for fear of getting harsher punishments. One fateful evening, Obi intentionally sent Esoe to the stream to fetch water, knowing it would be dark soon and that her father would be returning home that day. Although Esoe was scared of the dark village stream path, but she dared not disobey her stepmother. As soon as Esoe's father arrived home that day, Obi began her deceitful tale. Esoe has become notorious among the villagers for her promiscuity. She is often found in the company of people of questionable character, Obi claimed. She fights anyone who tries to advise her against her lifestyle, even me. I have tried my best to advise her like a mother, but it's all in vain. She even threatened to insult me and threatened to run away if I didn't leave her be. Obi finished, bursting into tears. Esra's father, who had finally had enough, disappointed and angry, without waiting to hear her side of the story, pounced on her immediately she walked into the sitting room to welcome him, giving her the beating of her life, while Obi and Kamsi pretended to pacify him, feigning concern for Esoe. Despite the hardships, Esoe's spirit remained unbroken. She loved and cared for people, showing compassion towards the weak and helpless, including those in worse circumstances than hers. Her selflessness and empathy earned her a special place in the hearts of the villagers, who had grew to adore and cherish her. One day, Obi devised another cruel plan to further damage the relationship between Esoe and her father. Early in the morning, she woke Esoe and sent her to a neighboring village to fetch a rare fruit, knowing the journey would take 2 days on foot. Unsuspecting, Esoe set off on her errand. Once her father arrived home that day, Obi began her false lamentations again. She packed her things this morning, saying she has had enough of being controlled and wants to live her own life. Obi sobbed. I have tried my best to stop her, my husband. I really tried, she cried louder. Fearful for his daughter's safety, Esoe's father set out that night to search for her. None of the villagers had seen Esoe or knew her whereabouts. Tragedy struck when Esoe's father fell to his death while searching for her along the slippery village path, leaving her at the mercy of Obi and Kamsi, her stepsister. Esoe returned 2 days later to the devastating news of her father's passing. Villagers pointed accusing fingers at her, blaming her for his demise, while others cursed her ill fate. Her grief was unbearable. There was no greater pain than losing both parents within such a short period of time. She cursed her chi and blamed herself, believing that if she had been brave enough to refuse her stepmother's request, her father might still be alive. Days passed and Esoe was consumed by tears and the constant reminder of her father's death. Her stepmother taunted her with cruel words, and her stepsister branded her a witch and called her all sorts of names. The weight of sorrow and guilt became constant companions to Esoe. Meanwhile, Obi saw her husband's demise as an opportunity to lavish his wealth, indulging in her husband's wealth while reducing Esoe to a slave within her own home. Esoe's days became an endless circle of hard work and sorrow, as she toiled from day today, shouldering the responsibilities of the house and doing all the household chores, including selling fruits at the market to appease her stepmother. The once vibrant Esoe was now a shadow of her former self. Her tears and sadness became her only companions as she lay awake at night, her heart heavy with the wish that she had never been born, as the love and happiness that once defined her seemed lost. There had always been a mysterious tradition in Esoe's village about a special event known as the Spirit Fair. It was said that once a year, at the stroke of midnight, spirits from afar would gather at the market for 2 nights of celebration. The villagers were wont to close their shops and leave the market well before the festivities began, for the spirits could be wicked and deceptive, often offering curses disguised as blessings to unsuspecting villagers. One fateful day, Obi visited the market and overheard a group of women whispering about the upcoming spirit fair. They exchanged hush stories and swore they had heard the strange music and laughter emanating from the market square during the previous spirit fair. One woman recounted a tale passed down from her grandfather about a young orphan boy whose stepmother, hoping to rid herself of him, sent him to the spirit fair. To everyone's surprise, the boy returned unharmed and eventually became the richest man in the community. However, he never spoke of what he had encountered at the fair, and his family remained the wealthiest in the village to this day. As the women shared their stories, some expressed curiosity about the spirits, while others warned that not all were as kind as the one who had favored the orphan. Some spirits, they say, were devious and wicked, ready to trick those who crossed their path. Obi, intrigued and encouraged by the tale of the orphan boy, began to devise a plan. She was determined to send Esoe and Kamsi to the spirit fair, hoping to gain even more wealth than the orphan boy. She saw an opportunity to exploit the mystical event for her own gain, disregarding the warnings and repercussions that came with meddling with the spirits. The upcoming fair became the focus of her thoughts as she imagined the possibilities and the riches that could come from such a risky venture. The fate of the two girls hung in the balance as Obi's greed and ambition threatened to throw them into the midst of a mystical world where the lines between blessings and curses were often blurred. The villagers' warning and cautions fell on deaf ears, as Obi's determination to exploit the spirit fair for her own gain became an all-consuming obsession. At midnight that fateful day, Obi dressed a reluctant Esoe and an excited Kamsi, handing each girl a small amount of money. Kamsi, unable to contain her excitement, boasted about the marvelous things she would buy and how the villagers who once called her spoiled and privileged would soon be at her mercy. As the clock struck midnight, the two girls arrived at the spirit fair. They were greeted by a breathtaking sight, a vast market square brimming with food, music, and laughter. The colorful air was filled with the aromas of exotic dishes, and every corner of the square seemed alive with merriment. The vendors and customers were dressed in elegant attires, adorned with gold, jewelry, and luxurious fabrics. The dazzling display left the girls in awe, their eyes wide with wonder as they took in the magical scene before them. Kamsi immediately joined the festivities, dancing gracefully to the rhythm of the drums and music. She eagerly accepted the food offered to them, dismissing Esoe's attempt to dissuade her. As Kamsi continued to dance in celebration, she suddenly felt a fragile, wrinkled finger tap her foot, causing her to jump in fear. When the girls turned to see who had touched them, they saw a tattered old woman sitting on the ground with a small girl who appeared equally destitute. Unlike the other vendors who wore rich and expensive clothing, this woman wore torn rags and looked like a beggar. Her wares were shabby and unattractive, resembling discarded items picked from the trash. Old native pots and cups were scattered on a dirty mat in front of her. Please patronize me, my daughters, she pleaded with a sad and tired voice, explaining that her granddaughter's health depended on it, as they had not eaten for days. Kamsi, offended that such a dirty woman had touched her, lashed out, insulting the old woman and kicking her wares away, despite Esoe's attempts to stop her. Ignoring the mess she had made, Kamsi strutted over to a beautiful bead seller's store and began selecting pretty beads for herself and her mother, leaving Esoe standing with the old woman. Esoe, saddened and disappointed by Kamsi's behavior, pleaded for the old woman's forgiveness and promised to make amends for the destruction of her wares. Determined to right Kamsi's wrong, Esoe decided to help other vendors by carrying their loads in return for money and any gifts they could help with, and assisting merchants in packing up their goods at the end of the night. Meanwhile, Kamsi continued to shop, purchasing as many beads as her money could buy. The bead merchant instructed her to wear the beads to sleep that night, promising a surprise. When Kamsi pressed for details about gold and valuables, the merchant ignored her, prompting Kamsi to hurl insults at her. As the night drew to a close, Esoe gathered all the money she had earned from helping the ghost along with the money given to her by her stepmother and handed it over to the old woman. Kamsi tried to stop her, threatening to report her to their mother. Touched by Esoe's kindness and empathy, the old woman gifted her one of the old native pots she was selling, advising her to use it wisely and to never stop being kind. Throughout their journey home, Kamsi mocked Esoe's gift, emphasizing how the old woman and her granddaughter had supposedly scammed her. Though Esoe felt a pang of disappointment at losing her money due to Kamsi's recklessness, she was content knowing she had helped someone in need. When they arrived home, Kamsi eagerly recounted their ordeal to their mother Obi, emphasizing how Esoe had given her money to the old woman. In a fit of rage, Obi beat Esoe mercilessly and threatened to kick her out of the house. That night, Kamsi and Obi forced Esoe to sleep outside while they placed the beads Kamsi had bought under their pillow. The next morning, they woke up to find themselves afflicted with a strange and terrifying curse. The beads thought to bring them wealth and status had instead brought them a hideous and humiliating transformation, their bodies now covered in unsightly moles that smelled. Their screams attracted the attention of the villagers they had looked down upon. The villagers were terrified at the disgusting sight of Kamsi and her mother, making them shun them in fear of sharing in their cause. They began to confess to their atrocities, making the villagers stare in disbelief. The tables had turned, and Kamsi and her mother, Obi, were left to face the bitter fruit of their own making. Their screams and horror and despair echoed through the village, a haunting reminder of the power of karma. Esoe's fortune had finally changed with the magical power of the pots given to her by the old woman. Her father's old business flourished and she became the most successful oil merchant in the village. Her kindness and generosity earned her the respect and admiration of all, a stark contrast to the fate of Kamsi and Obi, who had been reduced to begging. They were a constant reminder of the dangers of greed and the consequences of their cruel actions. The villagers would often whisper stories of the ghost fair and the lessons learned from Kamsi and Obi's downfall, cautioning against the dangers of covetousness and the importance of treating others with kindness and compassion. Esoe's success, on the other hand, was a testament to the rewards of goodness and the magic that could unfold when one's heart was filled with love and generosity. The end. Thank you for watching.